Every Mario Kart game has some good music, but what are some of the better soundtracks across the series? Does each game have a main theme that defines it, and which of those are the best? I sat down and listened to all 8 circuit songs from every Mario Kart game, and made a numbered list based on how much I enjoy each track. Before the list though, it's important to clarify exactly what qualifies and what doesn't. See, each game in the series hovers around what can be defined as a main theme, aka the circuit themes that are in contention here. The easiest way to identify them is to look for each game's respective Mario Circuit race course, as they will often be found here. These themes are often reused for at least one additional track in every game, except for Mario Kart 8, so it's safe to designate these as main themes. As such, only courses in each game that use this music are considered eligible. Mario Kart Wii does have Daisy Circuit as a playable track, but it uses different music and therefore is not counted here. In addition, with the exception of one piece of music, all of these can be found in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe either from the base game or via the recently added DLC courses. Despite the naming conventions, such as GCN Yoshi Circuit and 3DS Toad Circuit, because these racetracks use the same music in their original games, it's easy to assume that they would also share the same music had they been officially added to Mario Kart 8 to begin with. Also, these are far and away the best remixes of each track, so it makes sense to pull from these. Starting at the bottom of the list is Mario Circuit from Mario Kart Wii. Now, I should say that I grew up playing all of these games, except 7, and almost every aspect of them is deeply embedded in my memory. That said, I'm just not really vibing with some of the music from this game. There are a lot of good soundtracks from Wii too, so it's not the game's fault, it's just very indicative of the Wii era of music, where, at least to me, it sounds very samey and it's really hard to enjoy listening to. This is also the only piece of music not present in Mario Kart 8 at all, but I can't say a remix would really help this one rank any higher. Next up is Mario Circuit from Mario Kart 8. You might be asking, isn't this game notorious for being the one in the series with good-ass music? And this is true. The issue I have with it is the choice of instruments compared to its contemporary, in this case being Mario Kart Stadium, which, oh yeah, this is the first game in the series to not reuse any of its music for original courses. This and Mario Kart Stadium share the same melody, I just much prefer the rendition from the other course. If they were going to have all unique soundtracks, they should have tried a little harder. Number 6 might be a hot take, but Figure 8 Circuit / Mario Circuit from Mario Kart DS is still pretty good, just not quite as good as some of the other tracks. I probably played DS the most out of any game as a kid, so it tickles every single one of my nostalgia bones. I just don't really find the motifs very interesting in this one, but it still accomplishes the requirements for being a Mario Kart course theme, and not too much more than that. I also think that this might be the only track that had a slight downgrade compared to the original, not in a bad way at all, but the DS sound font makes so many classic tunes iconic that if you change the instrumentation too much, it loses some of that effect. Still a banger regardless. Now, I might get some hate for this, but I think the remake of Mario Circuit from Super Mario Kart is actually really good. It's already a pretty iconic video game soundtrack as is, and it doesn't stray too far away from the original. This remix, however, does the one thing that always enhances an older piece of video game music, being that they added these funky-ass, Caravan from Whiplash-ass drum fills that just make it so much better. Yeah, it's kind of short, but I still dig it. Number 4 is GameCube Yoshi Circuit. I feel like the Double Dash soundtrack gets a polarizing reception these days, but truth be told, it does carry quite a few strong tracks in its portfolio, and this one is no exception. The 8 remixes of GameCube songs aren't all that special, since a lot of them don't stray very far from the originals, for better or for worse. But Yoshi Circuit perfectly captures the upbeat energy of its predecessor while adding the big band flair that makes Mario Kart 8's soundtrack so special to begin with. The bronze trophy goes to Mario Kart Super Circuit and its awesome new rendition of the theme. It's quite a bit different from the version used in the original game. Instead, it's based on a prototype version found in demos from the early 2000s. Still, this song is just so catchy. Like most tunes in the game, the live instrumentation adds so much to make what's otherwise a pretty boring racetrack a bit more fun to play on. I definitely get a lot of nostalgia from hearing it, and it's basically the only reason anyone ever picks this track online, which happens a little too often. Just shy of second place is N64 Royal Raceway. When I think of Mario Kart and its music, this has to be one of the first tracks that comes to mind. And this is only from the second game in the series. It's so iconic. I particularly love the organ that is handily accompanied by a brand new horn line with this sort of call and response in the middle melodies. And props to that guitarist too, he must have been having a blast. All the pieces come together to make such a memorable remix of one of gaming's greatest soundtracks. Okay, so my number 1 pick is a little bit strange, but let me explain. Back in 2022, when the Booster Course Pass was announced for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, the visual quality of the returning tracks did not exactly leave me super excited. Now that the DLC has concluded, it's safe to say that the overall course selection skewed positive, but one track in particular is pretty widely regarded as one of the strangest, most underwhelming picks that Nintendo could have possibly made as a first impression, mind you. On the day that the tracks launched, I hadn't even considered the idea that, Oh yeah, Nintendo would be unforgivably lazy not to update the music for their DLC tracks, right? The original DLC for the Wii U version obviously got new songs, but that was only 16 maps, and they also maintained graphical and aesthetic consistency with the main game. Surely the same Nintendo that gave us Mario Strikers Battle League would find some way to cut corners, right? And then, the race countdown started, and I was hit with what might be one of my favorite musical tracks from a video game that I've ever heard. 3DS Toad Circuit. Which is so funny, because obviously this track is such a nothing pick in the grand scheme of things. It looks a hell of a lot worse than even its original track from 11 years ago, not to mention held up against almost every track from Mario Kart 8 and even throughout the rest of the DLC releases. But it truly got the glow up of the century, at least on the musical side. It's still very ugly and I have no idea how they got away with it. It just has so much energy and all the hallmarks of my other favorite tracks in the game. The organ player was going to town on the chart. The brass line adds such a vibrant energy with its counter melody, and the rhythm section keeps up the sense of momentum through what's otherwise a really boring racetrack. Have I mentioned how much I hate playing on Toad Circuit enough? Anyway, the shock and delight I felt hearing this brand new remix reassured me that the Booster Pass songs would not disappoint at all. What are some of your favorite songs from the series? How will they possibly top the live band for the next game? All questions yet to be answered as long as Nintendo sits around and refuses to announce Switch 2, I guess.